Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for another questions and answers video today. I hope you all enjoyed your day, even though the weather wasn't the nicest outside. I still managed to do some yard work and a lot of other chores in my house, which is why I didn't have as many videos today. But this is for a message to all of my classes. Keep the questions coming in, no matter if I have a video or not that day. Keep the engagement going because I always will try to have a questions and answers video for you guys in the afternoon. So we have Thursday, Friday, and then we'll go into our regularly scheduled spring break. But even during the spring break, if you guys have questions, I will try my best to make questions and answers videos for you. Okay? So that being said, let's get into your questions that you have for me. First one came from our Israel video, which is what tribes made up the 10 tribes? So the Kingdom of Judah was made up by the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. Okay, and so every of the others, Reuben, Simeon, Naphtali, Asher, Gad, Issachar, Naphtali, Manasseh, Ephraim. I'm missing one. Levi's not really didn't technically have one because some of them stayed with the Israelites. So basically, everybody except Benjamin and Judah. Another question that we have here is, why did Egypt develop its own culture around the Nile River? Basically, it was because of its isolation. Geography leads to a lot of what our culture becomes. Okay? So, a lot of people who grow up on the water, like civilizations that grow up on lakes and rivers and oceans, develop a certain culture as opposed to cultures that develop in mountains. Okay? So the reason that Egypt developed such a unique culture was its isolation. It really wasn't in as much contact with the other larger civilizations, for the most part. Okay? And then by the time Egypt was contacting its own different cultures, it had its own unique blend. This kind of is interesting because Egyptian culture changed. Egyptian culture changed a lot over time based on who it was in contact with. It had a unique culture during the Roman period, it had a unique culture before that with the Greek period, and it had a unique culture when the Islamic caliphates took over. So it just kind of depends. Okay? Let's see. Okay, I have a question here about our video this morning. The kings who wanted to be part of the Roman Empire, did they ever try to rebel once they were a part of it? Warfare was a constant in the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was both expanding its borders and also fighting off rebellions. Now remember, you have to go back into a mindset of basically the beginning of the Anno Domini period, all the years that start with AD. Basically, what you have to kind of think about is that it took years to travel about the Roman Empire and the world in general. Communication was a snail's pace compared to today. Look at, this video is a great example of that. I'm able to communicate with you guys instantaneously, or as close to instantaneously as possible. When it came to communication back then, it wasn't this case. And so these kings who lived at the far corners of the Roman Empire, they would sometimes have that temptation that says, I haven't heard from the Roman army for 5 years. Maybe they've forgotten about me. And so I'm just going to have a little sneaky rebellion. This happened a lot, especially with places like Great Britain, and also like over in Spain, and some of the newer areas that the Romans conquered, like out east, like in Palestine. More often than not, though, client kings like Herod would stay loyal to the Romans because the reason that the empire lasted so long was that any time a client king rebelled, you'd have a response, and it was a very brutal response. Just ask the Israelites in Jerusalem in the 70 AD when they burned down the temple. The Romans did. So it really was one of those things that fear and intimidation, but also economic opportunities of being in the empire led to a lot of people saying, there's no reason for me to rebel. I have a bunch of money, I'm making a bunch of money, and my children get a bunch of money, so why should I rebel? Even if my people that I'm supposed to rule don't like the Romans, I could care less. It's not a democracy. Good question. All right, let's go up to one. Got one that says, why is modern-day Turkey called Anatolia? And what was funny about this one, and the person who asked this one, this was a great question, and you actually stumped me because I looked at the question, I was like, oh, I know this one. Why is it called Anatolia? And so I did a little bit of research, and actually, because I've always been taught, that's what it was called. It was called Anatolia. That's actually not what they would have called it back then. There are so many different words for that area that modern-day Turkey takes up. A lot of times it was called Asia Minor because it was kind of like the gateway to Asia from Europe, especially Greece. But Ionian, Docian, those were all different Greek areas. Anatolia is kind of two things. It is a deprived from the Greek word for that region, and also in the Middle Ages it has origins from the Latin word for the region of modern day Turkey. So that was a really good question. It kind of stumped me on that one. Okay, I got good, and this is what I like to see. I saw a person ask a question on the Google Classroom, but then I saw someone try to answer it, and I love that, guys. Keep that up, because that is discussion. Because guess what? The person who answered it, they're technically right, but even if you're wrong, keep trying, keep researching, keep thinking. Just because you're at home this week doesn't mean that you stop learning. And just because you leave my class after this year doesn't mean you stop learning about how geography affects people. The undiscovered life is a life worth living. So, continuously asking questions, continuously thinking about things leads to a much more rich and endearing life. And I highly encourage you guys to keep that up. Okay? So, that being said, let's get to the question. Why was Israel considered a highway between Egypt and Anatolia? So, a person in the class answers, I think it was supposed to be a trading route. Which you are technically correct. And the question is, if all of you have your maps open of the Middle East and you say to yourself, well, why didn't they go somewhere else? Because everything else was a desert. Yeah, it was a desert. Think about this. Israel was, if you look at like the plant life of areas from Egypt to Turkey, you'll see a green strip along the Mediterranean coast where Israel is. Everything else is desert. And so you can't really go more than a few days without liquid water. And so people needed to stop for water. And if you stop in places that don't have water, you ain't going to get to your trade destination very quickly, now are you? Okay? So that was a great question and a great interaction with you guys on there. Okay, and we have one more. When they burnt Herod's temple to the ground, why didn't Rome rebuild it? And this is kind of one of those questions that we can think to ourselves is, why would they? Right? Why would they? One of the things that you have to kind of think about is that the Romans were pantheistic. They believed in many, many different gods. They had just put down a rebellion from a religious group that believed in one god, and according to their interpretation, they were supposed to kill any Romans living in their places. Why would the Romans rebuild a temple dedicated to that god, right? The Romans allowed Judaism to continue, but they realized that Jerusalem would constantly be a rallying point for Jewish people, as it is today. Okay, guys, those were fantastic questions. And you know what? If you want to, keep sharing these videos, keep sharing this channel. let people know, because regular people can comment on the YouTube channel as well. So if you've got friends from other schools who are bored out of their minds and want to do something with history, have them submit some questions too. I'd be happy to answer that for them. Also, parents, if you're watching this with your 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders, go to the Facebook page, Mr. H on YouTube, and submit your own questions. We'd love to answer them for you, because Google is only one click away from me. As you're going through this week, I'm going to give my 6th grade social studies class a challenge. I want you to pick the next 2 topics of the video. So tomorrow morning, I will finish the Israel video for you guys, but I will do a second one for you guys based on your topics that you would like. It has to be dealing with the Middle East, okay? So it could be a country like Egypt or Iraq, or it could be like a group like the Ottoman Empire, or the Muslims, Islam, or it could be like an event that happened in the Middle East. So I will tally up the votes from your submissions, and then I will announce them in the next video about what we're going to talk about for the rest of the week, okay? So you can comment them. I will only take, for this one, I'll only take submissions on the Google Classroom website, okay? So go to the Google Classroom website and give us what you would want to talk about the next 2 days, okay? So I'll see you guys tomorrow morning with the Israel video, all right? You guys have a great evening.